Hi Taurus, welcome to your June 2019 General Tarot reading. It's Raina here. So, just getting off of a holiday in the United States yesterday, and this kicks off the summer for us. And, it's still officially spring, but June is the month that we associate with the first month of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. I have to keep reminding myself. So, oh, and the kids are, this is probably the kids' last day of school or something, but, so I always, like, when I'm recording, right before 8 o'clock in the morning, I always have to keep that in mind. I'm always kind of wondering if they're going to be out there. I'm picking an additional card. The Five of Pentacles is a card that I oftentimes do that with. Okay. So, the heart of the matter is the Four of Swords. This is a card about retreat and relaxation, rejuvenation. So I usually think of somebody who's been through maybe a challenging time, or some, where you're working longer hours or something and you're just kind of chilling. Now, I just said this is kind of like, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, a time of holiday sometimes, depending on where you're at in your life, the type of work you do. Teachers, for instance, get off in the summertime. So that, if you're a Taurus who's a teacher, you might be like looking at June and saying, oh, thank goodness, now I can take some time off. I've really been through crunch time and all of this. So the point of the Four of Swords is to kind of get away from the stimulation, and can be a contemplative time, but it's not the same. I mean, it's in a similar vein as the Hermit card, perhaps, but not. I mean, you can group them together as kind of indicating being apart from the world, but not necessarily with the same intention. Although in this Four of Swords, there is a stained glass window in the background, so it does kind of depict some kind of religious building, and perhaps an atmosphere that is connected with a spiritual environment. But I think that it's more like even physical recuperation from something. And it's interesting, one of the things that I have kind of like formulated with my own personal decisions on what I see, read into the cards with the Four of Swords, is because swords are connected to air energy. Now, that's one of the air signs, for instance, is Gemini. And that's a sign that we really associate with communication. But the other air signs are Libra and Aquarius, and they all are connected with communication. The number 4 represents foundation. Okay, so if you put that together and you get this theme of rest, I think of somebody who is being very choosy with what they choose to consume in terms of information, or what they choose to say. So they're being very economical with it. And that, to me, suggests somebody maybe taking a social media fast, or limiting it quite a bit, because they want to get themselves together. They don't want to have scattered thoughts. They don't, the number 4 is a number of order to me, because it's a number of like foundation. And so that may also be at play, and depending on what kind of things are going on in the person's life. If I just use the example of the teacher. Well, one of the things too that the teacher is doing is also talking a lot and involved in that kind of mental exhaustion, perhaps. And then now they have a time to kind of just like decompress. I think that's a good way of putting it. But here's the other thing too. If somebody is a student, maybe you're a student, and June is the time, maybe you've graduated or at least finished the semester, finished the school year, and you are like, oh, I'm done with finals, now I can just chill. So that kind of thing. And like I said, this can relate to one of the air signs. And, maybe they are figuring in your life somehow. In the past position, we have the 10 of Cups. This is a card of marriage, the happy home, and things like that. So there's a couple of cards flanking the Four of Swords that connect with love, okay? So I'm going to talk about the Lovers in a second, so that's very interesting. Makes me wonder if there is some kind of like engagement or even a marriage that is experiencing an affair, and you may be either like unplugging from it because you don't want the drama of dealing with, if you're the one that is an unwilling participant in an affair in your marriage, and you're kind of like putting yourself away, or if you are the one that, is choosing between either staying married or not, and so you're just kind of like a legal separation. A legal separation, I mean, like a separation, and even if you're not married, if you're in that kind of committed relationship and you're taking time out so that you can clear your head, that could be it. And also, like somebody who's planning a wedding, maybe you are exhausted. You've announced that you're getting married and you feel this sense of like exhaustion about it. I don't know. The higher message is the Lover's card. So if there's anything involving a relationship, the Lover's card is about the true union, I think. That's why they show these people naked, because it's like to indicate that type of like authentic love that is, the stripped bare type of thing that is not like an ulterior motive or anything along those lines. And this kind of person is very, if you're in a situation like this, perhaps you married for love and you realize that this is, what you married for, and even if there have been problems in the relationship, you realize that you haven't stopped loving this person. That would be an example. And, the true love. Because, I want to call attention to this card that is challenging this, since it's the Temperance card. Now, if this is career related, it may be suggesting that you're not balanced enough with your life. Maybe you're devoting too much attention to work, or sorry about the trains, jeez. When I started, there weren't any trains. I'm waiting for these trains to end, and it seems like they're never ending. And I always call attention to 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on land. And this kind of thing, is about balance between the spiritual and the material. And when love is involved, that can sometimes indicate that a person is, oh yeah, I love this person no matter what. But the practical concerns do play into things as well. Because the Temperance card in the challenge position could be somebody with like an alcohol problem perhaps, or any kind of instability. And love isn't going to fix that. They have to fix their own problems, or maybe even like a mental or emotional imbalance. And they go, from one extreme to the other. With the, and same thing with work, doing something for money versus because you really enjoy it or you really feel connection to it, and marrying for money is another thing. And with Taurus, you can't help that you're an earth sign. I mean, you have a very practical nature, so that's important. But you are a romantic sign, so you do tend to value love. So the point is to combine those two things. That's what the Temperance card to me means. The material and the spiritual, which is the practical concerns with the spiritual concerns. But this is in the challenge position, so maybe one was chosen over the other. And this goes to the other point too. Maybe you love somebody who has an addiction, and it's like you can't love them out of their addiction, perhaps. They have to love themselves enough to want to change. And then they drag you down with them. That's the problem. So just looking at it from those angles. And the advice is represented by the King of Cups. This can be a counselor, somebody who has compassion, a priest or pastor, that you enlist to help you to make a decision that you need to make. The Six of Lovers. Sometimes I look at the number. The Lovers card can suggest that a choice is looming that you have to make. But the King of Cups, perhaps if this is a work situation and you feel burnout, you will be met with compassion by your boss. They will understand what you're going through, and then you can resolve this and maybe have, cut your hours or something like that. There may be even the Four of Swords could even be maybe having some kind of a medical leave. Who knows? Like due to exhaustion or some kind of condition that you have to rest a lot. What is that called? Chronic fatigue? Maybe something like that. So you have to rest. And the King of Cups might be some kind of a healer that you're going to, or some kind of situation where your boss understands, is sympathetic to your needs. But, I want to say too, if you do recognize your marital situation in what I described, and you do have a partner who has some sort of addiction, you may say, well, I don't have to go to the marriage counselor. This is their problem. But actually, that can be a good thing if you go and you're trying to resolve it from your end of things. Because you can't control another person, but you can certainly control how you view the situation and how you act within the situation. The outcome is represented by the Five of Pentacles, and this is one of the reasons why I picked an additional card, because this card tends to be quite I don't want to say just negative, like right off the bat negative, but it is a card of, to me, poverty consciousness. Not like actual poverty, but this lack consciousness, this feeling of like, I don't have enough, I'm afraid. And this, to me, can definitely be, an attitude, not necessarily what is happening in one's life. And yet, what happens a lot of times when people feel like this is they make decisions very out of fear, like fear-based decisions. So an example would be, I'm with somebody who is an alcoholic and I love them, but they're ruining my life. They're dragging me down with them, with their addiction. And yet, if I leave, I, won't have, I'll be alone. And what if I never meet anybody else? At least I have somebody right now. And that kind of thinking is based on the worst case scenario. But if you're with somebody who has an addiction, you are alone. That's the other thing about that. Another example would be, I'm afraid that this job is, too demanding on me. And I've already had this bout of exhaustion and I can't do this anymore. And, my boss is understanding, but I'm not convinced that I'm going to be able to avoid going back into this type of situation, because maybe they're short-staffed and they kind of rely on people to work longer hours or what have you, just do more than what is expected. And you might not be able to keep up with that pace, but you're afraid of, like, what if I can't get another job? Well, if something's taking its toll already, that's going to prevent somebody from getting a job. If you just completely collapse, you don't want to do that either. So being proactive means seeing the situation for what it is, and not being willing to just make decisions out of what ifs, the fears of this calamity in the future. The outcome is the 7. That was the outcome too, but this is another card. The 7 of Swords is the second card, the clarification card that I picked. And this is a card of being very strategic, I think, in this particular context. So wanting to maybe move on with your life, but not wanting to burn any bridges, not wanting to cause any unnecessary drama. So planning ahead might be part of this, and making sure that if you're doing something, that you're doing it with intelligence, that you're not doing it in a fear-based way because you want to have the best results, and being deliberate in your kind of your planning, so that you can have the kind of life that you really want. Because you're ruled by Venus, Taurus, and there's one thing that Taurus people don't like. It's being pushed, it's being harried. You like life to be very kind of chill. And therefore, that kind of environment that is more stressful just doesn't resonate with your particular type of personality. So don't be ashamed of that and try to be something that you're not. Rather, if you're in a situation currently, if you're working for somebody and if your boss is basically sympathetic, maybe you can do something about it. But if it starts creeping back and then you're ending up doing somebody else's job and things like that, you may have to just kind of get away from that situation. But you don't have to do so in a kind of a real dramatic way. You can just kind of look for another job in a very low-key way, and just try to gradually inch away from some kind of a commitment to someone. And this can also apply to your romantic life. If there's somebody who you work for and they are, it's hard to work for them, it's not a bad idea to be low key. I mean, did I say work? I mean, if you're with somebody personally and you love them, you may even love them, but they have their own problems. You can get away from that relationship if you realize that they're dragging you down in a less in-your-face kind of way. You don't have to allow yourself to do that, because it probably isn't the best way to do things, especially if somebody has an addiction, because they're already vulnerable and they already probably feel bad about themselves, and so there's no reason to kind of emphasize that. So having compassion and having this sense of like wanting to, care for yourself may be exactly what you need to do. Okay, Taurus, that's what I have for you. If you would like a personal reading, most of my readings are astrology based, and please, if you ever order a reading, please read the description so you can make sure that you get the kind of reading that you know what you're going into. Because sometimes people assume that I only do tarot readings. No, I don't. I actually do a lot more astrological readings. And so anyway, the link for my website, which is rainamoonastrology.com, is below. Take care. Bye.